Welcome back to the channel, you guys. Today we are doing American Reacts to how I see the US after living in Europe for 2 years. The idea of moving to Europe has always been on my mind, at least like a vacation home if I can afford one day. But I'm really curious to see what Dave in Portugal here has to say of the differences and whether he likes it or not. If it's your first time here, hit the subscribe button, hang around. I'm doing all kinds of videos about Europe on a daily basis. And if you've been here before, you know the deal. Hit the like button and let's get started. All right, let's see what you got for me, Dave. Let me know, am I buying a house in Europe?
Almost 2 years ago, I took one of the biggest risks of my entire life.
Oh, I wanna feel something. I just wanna breathe again. Dive into the deep.
I sold everything I owned, told my family and friends goodbye, and started a new chapter in Europe. Portugal, to be exact.
Nice. Damn it. I wonder if he has like a wife and kids. That would be the hardest thing for me to do if I wanted to move. Like if I was single, it'd be much easier.
This is how I see the US after living in Europe for almost 2 years. And let's just say it changed me, but not in the way I thought it would. I'm going to be brutally honest and not going to hold back. Keep in mind these are only my opinions and you can take it or leave it, simple as that. Ever since the first time I had visited Europe back in 2011, I knew that I wanted to move here at some point, gain some new perspective and introduce a new culture into my life. And what better place to do it than Europe? Instead of 50 states, there's 50 different countries that speak completely different languages and all have diverse food and cultural backgrounds. So I'm going to start with the biggest difference that I found between United States and Europe, and that is the work-life balance. Now, this is a big generalization because I know that there's countries in the European Union that work very hard and want everything to be perfect. Germany. But for the most part, it seems that one of the most important things to Europeans is their quality of life. There is this generalization that a lot of Europeans don't work as hard as Americans. And I don't think that's completely true. Many cafes and restaurants in Europe have the same owner from the start to finish. They never retire. They do the same thing with very exceptional quality until the day they die. And this isn't something that happens too often in the United States.
No.
This is one of the reasons that I think in Europe, the food quality generally tends to be a bit better, even the fast food. The European fast food tends to still have fresh ingredients if they aren't the franchises from America like McDonald's. You can't compete with a restaurant whose owner has been cooking the same dishes for 50 plus years. And it's pretty obvious when I speak to friends and family back in the United States that they kind of have this rushed agenda where they're trying to get as much done as they can throughout the day. And this was me included when I lived in the United States and I was working 12-hour days, sometimes 6 days a week. But I was missing out on some of the most important things like stopping and really listening to my friends and family. And I think that this is one of the most important things to most Europeans. I
totally get that. I work the same, anywhere between like 12 and 16-hour days. Usually, I don't want to say 7 days a week, but I do it at least 6. I like to come in and do a little bit of work on Sunday. It's usually a lighter day, like 4 or 5 hours.
This idea in the United States of having these big
and I don't want to, by the way,
and never being forgotten is something that's really important. However, in Europe, they have the right to be forgotten. There is actually a law in Europe that is the right to be forgotten. Now, this is a foreign concept that I don't think Americans think about a lot. In Europe, if you've had an imperfect past, the European Union allows you to move past that. And this also means that in Europe, people have the right to have their personal data erased. Once the personal data is no longer necessary to the organization collecting it. While in the US, forcing removal of articles on the internet is impermissible under the First Amendment. Now, after living in Europe for almost 2 years, I have come to the conclusion that the United States is currently in a state of toxic extremism. It's not very common in Europe to hear people arguing about politics, blaming unrelated issues on opposing political parties or specific politicians. It's just something you don't really hear that often. Now, that doesn't mean that Europe
That would be so nice. Oh my gosh. Everybody's fighting here. Everyone's so divided. I literally can't stand it. I don't want to say it drives me wild because I just kind of ignore it, but it is just annoying and dumb of like everyone just constantly butting heads with each other. So I could get on board with that 100%.
Europeans aren't political. However, you don't see it tearing apart families based on the president or prime minister that they voted for.
Yeah.
When I go to family gatherings in Portugal, rarely does politics ever come up. And this is something very polarizing and disappointing in the United States. I can't go anywhere in the United States without somebody blaming something on Biden or Trump. Like they're responsible for everything that's gone wrong in the past 10 years or something. Now, sure, I have my political beliefs as well, but I usually keep them to myself and don't ruin everybody around them's energy and vibe. Now, in Europe, they have witnessed all of the extreme political swings, and they are living in a direct result of the aftermath, which is why they are a little bit more hesitant and seasoned when it comes to political matters. If you come from a place...
Okay, that reason right there is enough for me to like seriously consider moving. So yeah, kudos to him for putting that one in there.
If you come from a place in the United States like Detroit or Flint, Michigan like I do, then safety is a night and day difference here in Europe. Especially Portugal, which has been ranked one of the top 10 safest countries in the world.
Really?
After living in Europe for 2 years, I've been able to let my guard down and not be as paranoid. Especially when I'm walking around alleyways at night or going to see a movie or going to a festival, I don't have to worry about the place being shot up.
Yeah, so him coming from like Detroit, Flint, Michigan area, like that's a really rough area. So for the safety for him, I could totally understand it. And for a lot of major cities, people living in major cities in America, yes, you're going to find way safer big cities or bigger areas in Europe than you're going to in America. So totally understand that one.
It's very sad, but this is a true reality in the United States. And in the USA, wealthy people have moved to the suburbs in gated communities because they fear the inner city's rising crime rates. And I can't help but to think back in times when I lived in Los Angeles where I was robbed at gunpoint, or when I lived in Reno, Nevada and our family house was broken into multiple times. And sometimes it makes me apprehensive to come back to visit the United States. And if you've ever had a gun held to your chest, I'm sure you can sympathize with what I'm talking about.
Yep. I have twice. I was like really young though, and I was not in a good place when I was young, running around being a little hooligan and getting in trouble and getting arrested. But yeah, it's happened to me before, so I get it. But for someone like him, who's just like walking around LA, minding his own business, the guy obviously has his stuff together. For him to be in a situation like that it's absurd.
After being in Europe for a couple years, there are few places that have violent crimes like the United States. Europe is certainly not a perfect place, and you do have crimes happening here. However, nowhere near the scale of the violent and gun crimes happening in the United States. A place where you can be attacked in the streets for your beliefs. And that concept to most Europeans is completely foreign. Now, I know that prejudice exists here in Europe. However, I have never heard an ethnic or racial slur ever yelled on the streets like I have in the United States. And that should say a lot. All right, now let's
never
talk
heard any
about
on the
food.
streets before.
Unless you have the financial means to do so, you are likely paying 4 times for gourmet foods in the United States, where in Europe, these foods are just the normal. In America, fresh, healthy food is usually sold at a premium where only the richer people can afford it. In my opinion, this is a crime against humanity. Here in Europe, they subsidize the agriculture so that it can still be sold at an affordable price. And more than half of the GMOs and chemicals available in United States foods are illegal in Europe. Typically in Europe, teenagers speak multiple different languages.
We'll go back really quick. Food is another huge reason. This guy is making some valid reasons for your normal average American to want to move. Obviously, we do have positive things here as well, but food, like, oh my gosh, yes, I want more healthy food, especially cheaper. It's so expensive. If you want to buy organic, like he said, you're going to spend 2 to 4 times more. You could have a cucumber sitting there that is always much bigger, and then you have the organic cucumber, which is is smaller because it's not ingested with or injected with a bunch of hormones and garbage and pesticides. So it's larger. And then the smaller one is like 3 times as much. And you're like, me and my wife just look at each other. I'm like, get the organic. It's fine.
In Europe. Typically in Europe, teenagers speak multiple different languages. They're well versed in fine arts and music.
Yeah.
And they understand world geography. Generally just much more cultured than what I see typically in the United States. I mean, when I first came to Europe when I was 21-year-olds, I had 17-year-olds playing me Mozart and Bach and painting incredible paintings and speaking 4 different languages to me, and I realized that, wow, I am not cultured at all. And I
Yeah.
think a big part of this is attributed to the education. All over Europe, schooling is free. And
Somebody commented the other day and said that like most countries in Europe, it's like required to learn 2 or 3 languages. I think it was when I did my German video on pronouncing German names. If you guys haven't seen it, go check it out. Really fun. But yeah, we teach our kids to learn different languages. Each of them are doing German and Spanish right now, but I don't know any. I know English. That's it. And that was my culture growing up. So yeah.
some of the best universities are even free. Students here can focus on their passions, and if they don't like what they're gotten into, they can switch it without being in this massive mountain of debt like in the United States. Students in Europe can focus on their passions, and if they made the wrong decision and don't like the career path they're taking, they're not in mountains of debt like they are in the United States.
Yes.
They don't have this strong pressure
I don't
to
have
continue to pursue
school debt,
something
but-
they don't want to do. And I think this is really important. Some countries in Europe even allow you to go into a specific trade of choice to be able to follow your passion and not have to learn all of this useless knowledge that has nothing to do with your career path. I know many people, including myself,
All right, so far Europe is better food, it's safer, and better education. America's not looking too good right now.
knowledge that has nothing to do with your career path. I know many people, including myself, that are afraid to go to the doctor in the United States because of how
here
much
comes
it's
healthcare.
gonna cost. And it's a complete opposite contrast here in Europe, where many of my friends go to the doctor regularly just to get a checkup because they can. And it seems to be encouraged by the doctors. In Europe, things like blood tests and exams are a fraction of the cost that they are in the United States. For instance, I went to the hospital and needed to have an x-ray done on my finger. And I went, no, how much is that gonna cost? And they said, €1. And I went, can you put my whole body into the x-ray machine then? Just kidding, I don't need any unnecessary radiation exposure. But I don't think that people should be in fear of going to the doctor. And this is
No.
the reality for a lot of people in the United States. Currently, I pay a premium healthcare insurance in Portugal for about €85 a month. And that includes just about everything. Whereas
What?
a not so good insurance in the United States that I was paying $500 for a month was never accepted anywhere and was a complete hassle to have.
Yeah.
So the polarization is pretty crazy in terms of the healthcare here. Now, I will say that the public hospitals tend to get overrun here in Portugal sometimes. But
Okay.
because I have private healthcare insurance, I can use any of the private state-of-the-art hospitals located anywhere in Portugal. And I've been there a couple times and they're super nice and I've been really impressed by the facilities. Now, alcoholism certainly exists in Europe, that's for sure. But the drinking culture in the United States is completely different than most of Europe, maybe more similar to Ireland or United Kingdom. A lot
Okay.
of European countries have a long history with wine and beer, and they've developed an art form on when and where and how much to drink. In comparison to the American binge culture, shots, this doesn't really exist in Europe for the most part. In fact, it's very rare to see people taking shots, and if they are, they're these little baby shots that are half of what they are in the United States.
I'm curious, what's it like for the younger generation? Because it's Memorial Day today for me. I know you guys might be watching this later in the week or next week, but it's a holiday here in the States, and I'm going to go to the pool with my family literally as soon as I'm done with this. Yeah, I'm working on holidays, that overworking that we talk about. But yeah, we have drinks now. It's not too, like, nothing gets too crazy. If I drink something hard like whiskey, I usually just sip on it. I may have 1 or 2, and it's much more tamed. But when you're younger, he is right. It is like shots, beer bongs. I don't know if you guys know what a beer bong is. It's like this massive tube with like a funnel at the top of it, hold and put in your mouth and down a whole beer in one time. And it's usually the younger generation that's doing that. So I'm wondering if he's kind of referencing like the younger generation even doesn't drink crazy like that in Europe, or if he's kind of like more generalizing it across the entire population. So you guys let me know in the comments, especially, you know, how frequently and how much you all drink.
I feel like in the United States, it's encouraged to get wasted and get super drunk, and people brag about these experiences. But in Europe, you don't want
Used
to
to
be
be
that
more,
guy. Don't be
yeah.
that guy stumbling through the streets. They will think you are a complete idiot. Do yourself a favor and don't be that guy. But how I see the United States now is
I'm sure it
not
still
all
happens.
negative. And there are some things that I took for granted while growing up there. One of those things is the American dream. Now, a lot of people said that is dead, but I believe the spirit is still very alive and well.
Yeah, I don't think
The
it's dead.
concept of entrepreneurship is not as popular here in Europe as it is in the United States. The United States is a place where people have a dream and they can move that future forward. And I have to credit that optimism for the entrepreneur spirit that I have today. And I
You know what? He's probably absolutely crushing it out there. Taking the entrepreneurial spirit of America and then going to Europe, where obviously there are entrepreneurs in Europe, you know, but like he said, it's not as prevalent. So he's probably doing pretty well. Obviously, he's got a YouTube channel. He's got like how many subscribers? 100,000 subscribers. Yeah, he's doing fantastic.
never realized how truly American this concept was. And I would not be where I'm at today without this hustler go-getter mentality. And I have to give massive credit to the United States for that. I think a lot of times in Europe, it is this foreign concept to have this grandiose dream where you can live in financial freedom and retire early. But I believe Americans have the spirit of working very, very, very hard to be able to retire and enjoy, a certain amount of your life. However, one of the biggest problems is that people don't end up retiring until 65 in the United States, and
Yeah.
most of your life's over. So
average
younger
person, yeah.
Americans now want to retire at 40 and 35 if they can, and more power to them if they can figure out how to do so. But after painting these generalizations with such a wide brush, it's important to mention that there are countercultures and micro-communities all over the United States that also criticize many of the things that I mentioned in this video. There's an America that I love and miss so much. But of course, there are truths to the stereotypes or else they wouldn't exist. But at the end of the day, honestly, I'm just trying to have an open, fun conversation. And that's one of the beautiful things about living in the free world. Let me know in the comments below what you think about this. Am I just trying to put everybody into a box, or is there so much more nuance to all of this? Either way, I will be continuing to make videos all about Portugal. If this is something of interest to you, make sure to
Awesome,
hit the
dude.
like and subscribe button. This is some guy named Dave in Portugal, and we'll see you next time.
Great. I like him a lot. That was really good. Hey, if you guys like what Dave's got going on, go check him out. I'm going to subscribe to him too. Maybe he's got some more Portugal videos that I can look at, and that's one of the stops that I want to make. So I'm going to have to do like 5 trips to Europe for multiple weeks to be able to hit everywhere I want to go. So yeah, that's it. Fantastic video. I appreciate you guys stopping in, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.